Welcome back. I hope you all had a good lunch. It's time now for a keynote speech on creating enabling environments for business to advance social development. And it's my pleasure to introduce Her Excellency Roxana Minzato, Executive Vice President for Social Rights and Skills, Quality Jobs and Preparedness at the European Commission.
Good afternoon. Dear ministers, dear business leaders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a true pleasure to address you today. Since, yes, we are looking around and we see a lot of discussions, a lot of talk that maybe businesses should step back from social goals, focus on their bottom line. But it's really inspiring to see that so many companies are gathered in the context of the Doha Summit today, also in the context of our event today, because your presence and of course the discussions that you've had in this context really tell a different story. It goes to show that business leaders do understand that economic success and social progress go hand in hand. That inclusive, responsible and forward-looking businesses are not only good for society, they are also stronger, more resilient, and yes, more competitive. As policymakers, we recognize that businesses can help address societal challenges because companies are deeply rooted in communities. They understand local needs. They have the creativity to design new solutions and the networks to scale them up. When businesses mobilize their innovation, their investments, their influence, they can accelerate social progress in ways that complement and reinforce our public policies. So our task is to create the right framework and the right incentives so that businesses can really drive social progress while remaining competitive. So for this, one of my personal beliefs is that social dialogue is absolutely essential. When employers and workers are able to sit around the same table, they find the balance, the optimal solutions that can promote decent work, that can promote social fairness, and also at the same time, sustainable long-term competitiveness. Social dialogue is a cornerstone of our European social model, of our European approach. Earlier this year, we have reaffirmed our commitment to strengthen the role of our social partners by signing the Pact for European Social Dialogue. Also, we think that effective enforcement of labor rights is crucial. When labor rights are not upheld, workers will lose trust and responsible businesses will face unfair competition. So the European Union has, of course, strong laws to protect workers, and we are working to make sure that they are applied effectively and they are also up to date. We also know that good enforcement depends on clear and simple rules. And that is why the European Union is reviewing its framework so that it cuts unnecessary red tape, administrative burden, and ensures that our rules are fair, but are also practical and are also fit for purpose. There is also another area where I know that the interest of businesses and the needs of society come together. And this is the topic of skills. As we have heard earlier today, education and skills development have long been the most powerful drivers of social inclusion and of upward mobility. At the same time, they do give businesses the skilled and adaptable workforce that they need. Yet today, and this is also the case for Europe, we are seeing increasing mismatches between the skills that people have and the skills that businesses need and are looking for. And this gap is visible at every level, and we can name truck drivers, nurses, engineers, data scientists, the IT sector across the board. As a result, we have statistics that tell us that 4 in 5 businesses in the European Union will struggle to find the staff, the talent that they need, the right skills that they need. And that labor shortages are now common across a wide range of sectors. This is, of course, a hindrance, a brake on productivity, on investment, and ultimately on economic growth. And that is why one of the very first initiatives of the current European Commission, we launched it in March this year, is the Union of Skills. Our goal is to make our education systems at all levels, starting with vocational training, looking at higher education, starting from early age to adult working age, to be more aligned with labor market needs, to expand access to lifelong learning for our workers. Most upskilling happens, of course, in the workplace itself. Across Europe, we see that more than 2/3 of our companies already invest in training in their own employees. And to really use and build this momentum, we've launched the Pact for Skills, which is a platform that brings together businesses, education providers, public authorities, to really be able to align training delivering to the real industry needs. Pact for Skills members have pledged to a total of 25 million workers to be upskilled by 2030. Progress is to be assessed, of course. It needs to pick up much more, but it's important that we have this common commitment and this common drive. And we do, of course, want to be able to go further. So yes, we do call on our members of the Pact for Skills to double down, to reinforce their ambitions. And I do invite all businesses that are not yet part of this growing community to join it. Finally, I will add that the European Union's efforts, of course, go beyond what it does inside its own borders. We are looking at initiatives that you maybe know, the Global Gateway. That is the approach that we take to work with partner countries to support capacity building, to support skills, education, the development of the local private sectors in the countries that we support. And of course, I would also mention beyond the Global Gateway, the talent pool. It's an instrument through which we will support member states to attract talent in the areas where there are shortages, to match job seekers from countries outside the European Union with job offers inside European Union, inside dignified work, decent work conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, when business and governments are able to work together, we can turn shared challenges into shared progress. The private sector has, as I've mentioned already, the creativity, the resources, and of course the reach to be able to drive the change. Public institutions are here to create and can and should create the conditions to make this possible. The Doha Political Declaration that we are together endorsing at this summit renews our shared commitment to social progress, and it recognizes the essential role of businesses of the private sector in achieving it. And this is an important moment. I want to emphasize it because it is absolutely strategic that it is recognized. I invite you all to join us in turning this commitment into very concrete, very measurable actions, because I think that together we can show that doing well in business and doing good in society are in fact two sides of the same coin. Thank you and lots of success to all of you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and your call for joining the Pact for Skills, I'm sure has sparked interest and questions. Thank you very much. It's now time for our next panel discussion, Scaling Inclusive Business Solutions for Social Impact, highlights innovative models that translate business commitments into tangible social outcomes. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Ms. Somya Mehta from Khalij Times, and our panelist, Mr. Uwe Dalechau, Head of Region Eurasia, Middle East and Africa, and Country Division Head for Bayer Pharmaceuticals, Middle East and North Africa, Ms. Chantal Devan, Group Sustainability Director, Social Impact DSM, and Ms. Hafsa Qadir, CEO of I Am Inclusive Limited, and Mr. Jose Roland Moya, the Director General of Employers Confederation of the Philippines. Welcome all to the stage, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And for those of you traveling in, welcome to Doha. Hope you enjoyed the lunch break, and thank you for reconvening here today with us. Throughout the day, we've been actually hearing all about how businesses can be key drivers in social inclusion and social growth across industries. We've heard about policies on inclusion and how they enable change on ground to create work and opportunities. This is the second part of that discussion, or sort of, taking that discussion forward and really understanding that how we can scale these business solutions, inclusive business solutions across industries, borders, and communities. And we have with us a very diverse range of perspectives today, ranging from multinational collaborations to community-led enterprises, and also shaping future-ready labor markets. It's my pleasure to moderate this session happening at the Private Sector Forum, part of the taking place on the margins of the Second World Summit for Social Development. And just sort of to contextualize this, really to understand what we're talking about now, I would like to open up to a common question to all the panelists. And really, if anybody wants to share, what are the key challenges when it comes to scaling the inclusive business solutions that we've been speaking about today? Anybody can take it.
Hello? Yeah. So thank you, Samia, for this excellent question. Just as a quick introduction, I'm Hafsa. I am the founder of a social enterprise which is born in Abu Dhabi, and it connects people with disabilities to jobs across GCC. Now, what I understand is often when we're talking about pledges and commitments and declarations, when it comes to converting that to action, it's a full proper job that somebody's going to sit and measure it and do that project and get it to the end and measure that result. But as somebody from the third sector, not the private sector, not the public sector, the third sector, I feel sometimes there is a big fragmentation on the need assessment part of it. What do the private and public sector actually need to execute to turn these commitments and pledges into very, very tangible action? And so if that need assessment is much more clear in the start, and we have a very results-driven strategic approach to the actions that we're trying to take, we will have much faster results towards, the big goals that we've set up, such as eradication of poverty. So to break those down into simpler terms, we need all these different sectors to come together, and public and private sector, which are collaborating, also need to take in the third sector with the solutions along with them.
Would anybody else like to add to that?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'd like to discuss or identify the challenges from the point of view of an employer's organization to which I belong. And I have identified at least 5 challenges, one of which is the limited access to finance, especially by the micro, small, and medium enterprises and social enterprises. The second one would be the capacity gaps in implementing sustainable and inclusive practices. The third one would be the weak policy alignment and oftentimes the fragmented support coming from the government. The fourth one would be the low private sector awareness of the long-term value of inclusiveness, and the last one would be the insufficient data and impacts metric system that would guide investment and scaling decisions. Thank you.
Absolutely. You mentioned isolated approach there. That's exactly why we're here today, to gather a framework for multi-stakeholder engagement and a frame of sort of solutions that come together, bring various different sectors, private sector, government together to work on an inclusive society. Also, I would like to now understand how each of you play a role in overcoming some of these challenges that, we've sort of highlighted right now with the wealth of your expertise. Mr. Uwe, can I bring you in here? At Bayer Pharmaceuticals, actually, you have a very clear mission statement: hunger for all, health for all, hunger for none. Apologies. Health for all,
I was
hunger
just
for none.
thinking it through.
No, that's not true at all. Health for all, hunger for none. That's the mission statement. And it's a very clear link actually between corporate purpose and social impact. So how, from your experience, do, these partnerships between government and private sector work in successfully advancing social inclusion?
Yeah, Soumya, many thanks. And first of all, great to be in this panel. I feel very privileged, and allow me perhaps on this personal note, just a couple of remarks. I'm representing pharmaceutical company Bayer, but I also believe to some extent, although maybe not authorized, I'm also representing the many colleagues that are working relentlessly to bring innovation with the research that we're doing to the millions of patients and families. And I think we know this comes with a great responsibility. We are an industry where we can cure disease, where we can treat the untreatable, and where we offer hope. And I think I speak really for the entire industry, that we understand our research and our innovation is worth little to nothing if we don't provide access to those that need access to those innovations. And you mentioned, thankfully, our mission that we have at Bayer, the company I work for, health for all and hunger for none, because we are a company that is very well positioned in nutrition, but also in healthcare sector, in disease areas that are chronic, in many cases, cardiovascular disease, for example, oncological diseases, women's health. And we are in leading positions where we can really drive and make an impact. And of course, people might challenge and say, yeah, you do have this great mission, health for all and hunger for none, but how do you really embed this into your business strategies, which is one of the challenges. And maybe I give you just two examples. If you would ask anybody in the company, what are the two key drivers of success and measurements on providing access? We are looking at 100 million women that have access to reliable and safe contraception in low and middle income countries. And everybody in the commercial teams is aware of that access target. And we are measuring that relentlessly and focusing on advancing on that measure. And I'm happy to report, with the ambition by 2030, we are today at 51 million. So it's a long way to go. And the same is true in our sector that we call consumer health, where we also want to reach 100 million patients in underserved communities. And we are currently, when it comes to self-care, access to medications, we are currently reporting 73. And I'm giving you that example because we believe if we want to progress on providing access in a sustainable, equitable way, we have to embed our actions when it comes to access into our commercial strategy. And if you ask me what are the key challenges and also perhaps later learnings, I think one of the key aspects is that you have to have a holistic approach. If you believe that with tiered pricing, or if you believe with mobile clinics or capability building in one or the other area, you're going to make a major difference, you're probably falling short. So you really have to look holistically on your efforts in providing access. Second one is you need local partnerships and you need collaboration with many stakeholders. If we try as an industry to advance on our own, we will definitely not succeed. And the third one is probably you need a long-term commitment. There is really no short-term gain. And I might give you just one example to make it a little bit more tangible. Liver cancer in Egypt. We've been looking at the kind of the burden of disease in the country. And then the Ministry of Health and Population reached out to Bayern asking, how can we collaborate? And we are looking now at a program that is roughly 3.5 years old. We have reached 78 centers. We have done more than 120,000 screenings. We have educated more than 3,500 physicians. And we are still, driving this project because it is an absolute necessity for the country, and we're happy to be a strong ally to the society. And we have realized if we try to do this alone, we're not going to go far. So these are probably just 3 aspects that I want to throw into the discussion for now.
Thank you so much. Talking about sort of this stakeholder action of many different diverse industries coming together, Hafsa, you have also at I'm Inclusive built a very dynamic stakeholder engagement framework. If you can sort of, tell us a little bit about what I'm Inclusive does. It connects people of determination, which is disability, people with disability, to suitable employers in the Middle East and beyond. So how at I'm Inclusive have you been really able to move the conversation around disability inclusion to sort of just, enhance it from not just a CSR initiative that's on paper, but to actually embedding it into a corporate culture or the leadership culture in organizations? And at what scale have you been able to do that?
Thank you for that question, Samia. It's really good to hear the work that Bayer is doing, by the way, as well on ground, and that it's measured. It makes me think of some of the work that we do as well and the partnerships that we have. At the moment, we have realized that specifically in the GCC, the capabilities and skill and talent of people with disabilities can be nurtured so much beyond than the access we have. So for me, starting I'm Inclusive is a journey which is very close to my home. My brother is a person of determination. Person of determination is a term that was coined in the UAE by the leadership. It recognizes the person's achievements and capabilities and goes from a model of medical diagnosis to really understanding talent and skill. So in our work, we have been working very closely with the private sector and the government sector in the UAE to take trainings, workshops, skills, not just to the candidates, but also to the employers. Because people need to get hired, but employers also need to know how to retain this amazing talent within the organization. And for us, that's a very crucial point to provide this dual support. So on a day-to-day basis, if I share what that looks like, it looks like Donata Airports collaborating with us to train all of their staff on what does disability inclusion mean. It looks like Dubai Holding Entertainment, implementing programs in all parks and destinations to create more inclusivity for visitors as well as people with disabilities who are bringing their families to the parks. And in that process, it's not something that they're doing for people, right? We're co-creating with people. So for example, a lot of the ideas that I have as a social enterprise, I run them by my brother. Similarly, I have a huge think tank, an advisory council of people of determination. Just now I'm here and we have the Dubai Design Week running back in the UAE. And the entire program has been led by people of determination themselves, where they've not just created like a small art piece, they've created an entire dome of inclusion, collaborating together and bringing the Canadian university students to sit with them, volunteer with them. So there's a lot of youth engagement, corporate engagement, and we have understood that when we talk about CSR initiatives, that is something that can often come across as a very one-off event. But from our perspective, we talk about CSA, which is what is your corporate social accountability? And so we want to go into that with long-term partnerships, multi-year partnerships. And we're very grateful to have that in the UAE and across the GCC. So that's some of the work we're doing. I just want to share a data metric there as well, that we have been able to roll out our trainings to 28,000 people in the UAE on the awareness of disability inclusion because of the work that we're doing. And we're doing that through tech-enabled learning management systems.
Chantal, would you like to add into that? And, as DSM Firmenich operates across various different industries, just to sort of tell us what are the key ingredients to turn commitments to inclusive growth into measurable outcomes and social impact?
Yes, okay, great. First of all, a big thank you for the organizing committee to make this private sector forum happen. For the ones who are not familiar with our company, DSM Firmenich is a Swiss Dutch-based company, and we are specialized in creation of solutions for health, nutrition, and beauty. We have around 30,000 employees, and we are active in over 60 countries. Now, to come back to your question, we believe that embedding human rights and social responsibility is essential at every level of our business. So we really truly believe that our sustainability program is not a program in isolation. The way how we design sustainability and hence also human rights, social impact, is really truly collaborating with our customers, but also how we make sure we innovate and source and manufacture, and ultimately also how we deliver our solutions. So for us, it's really a business imperative and not really a standalone strategy. And with that also, obviously, accountability and transparency is key for us in driving a responsible business conduct. Now, with that, we have set ourselves social impact measures by 2030. And I would like to highlight three, starting with living wages, obviously a topic that's very much often mentioned already today. So we secure a living wage payment for all of our own employees, or 30,000 employees. And we also are cascading the concept throughout our supply chain. Secondly, we ensure that we don't have a gender pay gap. And in light also with your story, we also are very much looking into broadening that to the intersectional approach. So not only focusing on the gender lens, and also embracing the topic of equal pay, obviously. And then thirdly, we made a commitment that by 2030, we responsibly source 100% of our key natural ingredients. And with that, we mean the sourcing takes place with respect for both people and planet. So these targets are not really aspirations for us. They really are anchored in our business strategy. While our group sustainability sets the targets, it's really the business units who are accountable for execution of this. And you can imagine with these topics, we cannot do it alone. So obviously we work together with a lot of partners and NGOs to make this happen, because we recognize these issues you can't tackle alone. So you really need multi-stakeholder initiatives. So we are a partner, obviously, of UN Global Compact, and we participate in their Forward Faster program on living wages. And for the companies here that are not familiar with that, and also if you are just starting your living wage journey, or you are facing challenges like we do as well, and cascading it in your supply chain, I really would recommend you to have a look at that Forward Faster living wage program. It really helped our business to further drive meaningful impacts throughout our supply chain on living wages. In addition, we also work with various partnerships, the Bill Gates Foundation, World Food Programme, and in particular with UNICEF, we focus on responsible business conduct and child protection systems. So we really truly believe in that public-private partnership. And in addition, we joined various coalitions with Fair Labor Association and UOBT. And for us, these collaborations really help us to move away from an isolated approach into really a collaboration that helps us drive meaningful change in our value chain and not only focusing on our own operations.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's also zoom out a little bit and bring you in, Mr. Roland. You lead the Employers Confederation back in the Philippines. What are you seeing on ground in terms of the strategies that are really bringing together workforces, not just to make them sort of future ready? There's all this talk of AI and tech transformation, but also to ensure that there is, worker well-being and protection at the heart of it. How do you sort of bring these two things together?
Yeah, thank you very much, Soumya, for the question. By way of introduction, the Employers Confederation of the Philippines brings together about 600 corporations, mostly large and medium-sized in the Philippines as direct members. We also have as members 60 industry associations and chambers of commerce, both local and foreign. And we have also different chapters in the various regions of the Philippines. We are a member of the International Organization of Employers, a co-organizer of this business forum. I have lived long enough and worked long enough in an employer and business member organization, and I have seen business organizations struggle through crisis after crisis, and the very survival and existence of employers and business membership organizations were tested, especially during the COVID pandemic. So the evolution has been quite radical. Originally, the mandate of employers and business membership organizations is on labor and social policies. But in recent years, we have seen the expansion of this mandate to include sustainability and inclusivity, including gender equality, of course. And I have also been involved in the ASEAN Confederation of Employers, where I served as Secretary General for 3 years, and I have an opportunity to look up close and personal into their programs and services. And there's a common thread that runs across the member federations of the ASEAN, and it is that building future-ready labor market requires a collaborative pursuit of innovation, worker protection, and inclusive growth. At ECOP, we view business not just as an economic engine, and this was emphasized repeatedly this morning. I also look at business as a social catalyst. So it is not just an economic engine, but a social catalyst as well. In today's rapidly changing world, essentially for micro, small, and medium enterprises, inclusive employment and sustainable development are essential to long-term success. Employer organizations offer and deliver services, including but not limited to training, capacity building, advocacy. They also have established platforms for social dialogue, including strong bipartite relations with their counterparts in the trade union movement. And this services fosters an environment where decent work is created, social protection is strengthened, and worker well-being is being protected. I would just like to share very briefly 3 concrete examples of ECOP's ongoing initiatives that align with the themes of sustainability, green transition, and resilience. First, on sustainability and green transition, ECOP partners with the International Labour Organization, the European Union, and the Confederation of Danish Industry on projects that promote green jobs and enterprise resilience. Through these projects, we identify opportunities in the circular economy, renewable energy, and sustainable supply chains, not just to meet environmental targets, but to create new livelihoods and competitive advantages. On social protection and workplace well-being, ECOP advocates for mainstreaming social protection into business strategy through programs on mental health, occupational safety and health, gender equality, helping companies embed well-being into daily operations to boost morale and productivity. Lastly, on digital transformation and lifelong learning, ECOP supports upskilling and reskilling of workers through partnerships with government and academic institutions. We are developing learning and training modules to help employers and employees adapt to AI-driven and green economies, ensuring that technological progress translates to inclusive opportunity rather than employment displacement. So these are just a few examples of how we promote and encourage inclusivity and sustainability among our members in the Philippines. Thank you.
Few of many, I'm sure. When talking about also developing in transitional economies, economic growth is often a very urgent goal that's chased. So in those circumstances, Mr. Uwe, could you tell us a little bit about how do we then balance this drive for social inclusion and community development while also chasing the economic growth goals? And sort of how do we balance the two out?
I think it's a great question, and maybe it brings us back also to your introductory question. What is one of the challenges in scaling? At least in my experience, and I've been in the industry for more than 30 years, one of the challenges is that there's no one size fits all. I think that's a clear learning that I had kind of in my professional career. And every country is different. The needs in those countries and even within the society are very different. And we as an industry, we definitely have to understand, acknowledge, and work towards the needs that are locally relevant needs. I think that's one perhaps element to your question. The second one, I think what is also important in everything we do, we need to monitor, measure, and we need to also be able to adjust quickly to what we learn and observe in our initiatives and our programs. And maybe I want to take you, and I try to be really tangible and practical, to Ghana. Bayer is, as I mentioned before, strongly positioned in cardiovascular disease. And, you know, the Cardiovascular Society in Ghana came to us and said, look, we need your help in educating rural communities about blood monitoring, blood pressure management. That's just one example. So we created the Ghana Heart Initiative, together again with many stakeholders, the GIZ, for example, the Minister of Health again, Cardiovascular Society. And that program was running over 39 months. And at the end of this journey, we realized it was great progress, but how do we go beyond this cardiovascular element? And we learned a couple of aspects. Number one, we had several modules, that the modules that we were implementing, mobile clinics, awareness and education, were not sufficient enough. So we added, for example, a digital component to what we are doing in Ghana. And then we invited other pharmaceutical companies to join. And now we have basically expanded this to other disease areas, such as diabetes. And we can already 1 year into the program see how we are able to scale and create a much, much bigger impact. So I think, yeah, one part is not one size fits all. The other one is clearly what I mentioned related to this, you know, long-term commitment and partnering. And lastly, if you are in business, of course, we unfortunately try to focus often on our product and the services that we are trying to sell. And I think we need to disconnect from that. We need to clearly think broader and bigger. And I think it brings us back also to the mission that I mentioned. We believe if society is thriving, if the communities are thriving, our business is thriving. So if you disconnect your efforts, your initiatives from your products that you're trying to sell, you will ultimately see success for everybody involved.
Hafsa, can I move on to you? What are some of the ways that you've identified in which businesses can truly expand opportunities for underrepresented groups, and also can we measure impact beyond the job numbers?
Thank you. So within the group that I work with, which is people with disabilities, we have so many subgroups and different backgrounds within that, right? So in part of working with people with disabilities, initially we started working with youth and upskilling youth. Then we started to receive a lot of family members and people who were representing low-income families. It expanded to us understanding that we have a lot of senior Emiratis coming up in the workforce. Then we started to understand that we need to have enough gender equity, which I think is sometimes a starting point for the private sector. But for us, it has been a bit of a reverse journey where we were like, okay, we have all these people who are wanting to have jobs, but then within that, we have so much to cater to. So when it comes to, really building up true inclusion within the workforce or within our businesses, it's really important to understand that customers represent these groups as well. 1 in 6 people, as per the World Health Organization, are people with disabilities. And 71% of disabilities are invisible. So you cannot just look at someone and say, they have a disability. So often when businesses are trying to bring these solutions, or if you're hiring an employee in the workforce who represents the different demographics that you're actually catering to as a business, you can make a very, very solid business case for this. So these solutions are not just something that we're doing as a social good. And often I get told, oh, this is such a noble job that you're doing. But really, I've just started to turn the picture back to myself. What if I had a disability tomorrow? What's my organization going to do? Yeah, I run the organization, but have I set up the systems? Or it's a very tough question to ask, but the top performer in the team, we all have that one person who's like Iron Man, Iron Woman, right? They'll show up anywhere. They'll get anything done. Do you have systems and processes for them in place? And when you start asking those very real, concrete questions, that's when you start to find those really concrete solutions. And I would assume for companies like Bayer as well, when you're serving these markets, if you have employees, you'll have the customer within your team telling you those responses, right?
Can I respond to this? I think this is great. I love this topic, and I was not prepared to really cover this, but what you said is so true, and it brings us back how important it is not to have an access strategy or diversity strategy. It's part of the business, and you're so true. Our customers, they are as diverse as we should be in our organization, because if we only employ a certain set of individuals that represents our mindset and our thinking, we're not going to find the solutions that represent the needs of this very diverse customer. So it is good business. Diversity is great business. And the same is true for, inclusion and all these topics. So I just, it's music to my ears to what you're saying. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Sorry, I don't want to take away from other panelists. I'll just share a very tiny joke that I have between me and my brother here. So it's also about resourcefulness, right? When we don't consider the diversity of the talent, we don't take into account what the unique perceptions can bring. I remember going to an event with my brother, and there were less chairs. And he's a wheelchair user. And he said, I'm your only employee who brought their own chair. I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense,
That's lovely to hear. And, Chantal, at DSM as well, you have been at the forefront of helming some excellent cross-partnerships, cross-government and cross-sector partnerships. So can you sort of outline just in a few points, so, people sitting here can take that away as well to their organizations. How have these been successful in furthering the social inclusion agenda?
Thank you for that. Thank you also for your inspiring talk. It also helped me to remind indeed that also we as a company, I highlighted the targets we have focusing on gender first, but then you turn it around. So that's a really good insight also to take home with us. So indeed, like I mentioned in the previous question, we are indeed having a lot of multi-stakeholder initiatives and coalitions. And it really helped us as a company to scale the impact by bringing together governments, in our case also investors, customers, even competitors, and communities to address really complex human rights topics, for instance, as child labor. As I also mentioned, you cannot tackle that alone, so that really helps us to boost that engagement. What further helps us also that these collaborations enable to share knowledge. So you have a cross-sectional leverage of complementary skills so that you could make use of, but also to align on common standards and creating really far-reaching changes in the industry. So for us, really, it starts as a company to scaling your leverage as a company. And we believe that it's really an amplifier for influence. So we're grateful for the partnerships that we're having and always open to explore others. And to come back to your question on some enabling strategies, in my experience, what helped when we either formed or we joined such a collaboration is that from start you really need to jointly create a safe place. So allowing an inclusive governance that you could have the voice heard of everyone in that collaboration of coalition. And with that also making sure that you have a funding mechanism and a great funding mechanism, but really also sector broad alignment on standards and making sure that obviously you have regular reviews of the outcomes, that you really have impact KPIs that steer progress. And I would say together that were factors that helped us really move from an isolated approach in our own operations to really have meaningful impact throughout our value chain.
I'd also like to join Mr. Roland here to sort of just understand that, how can, we've heard some excellent initiatives here from the panelists, but how can we truly embed, worker protection and sort of the vocational training and their lifelong learning, as well as we have heard some of the key goals that have been outlined today. How can we embed that as part of a business strategy, which is economic and growth centered, and not just a compliance strategy in an organization that's reduced to a piece of paper?
Yeah. ECOP has 3 taglines, and one of the taglines is a responsible employer. This tagline emphasizes the most effective way for businesses to embed social protection and social welfare is to integrate these principles into the core business strategies and operational models. This means going beyond compliance. Sometimes I have this not really negative feeling, but reservations about compliance, because compliance hinders innovation. When you say compliance, it means it connotes something mandatory, and therefore you look at it from a cost perspective. So what happens is that there would be a race to the bottom. You just comply with the minimum standards of labor laws or labor standards. But if we look at it from the point of view of point of view of investment, then it opens up opportunities to look at other issues like productivity, resilience, and long-term sustainability. Because in a fast-changing business environment, there are other drivers of growth in the market. There are other opportunities for investment. Investors do not look at merely at compliance, especially these days. We at ECOP encourage companies to treat social protection as an enabler of growth and competitiveness, one that contributes to a stronger, more engaged, and future-ready organizations. For example, providing benefits and safety nets that enhance workforce stability, investing in mental and physical health programs, promoting gender equality and inclusive wide workplaces, which was mentioned earlier by Hafsa. Because if you don't look at diversity, or if you don't consider diversity as part of your business model, then you exclude a certain population from being part of your pool of workers. For example, for all you know, the most qualified worker is in that population that has been excluded. In essence, businesses that treat worker well-being as a growth strategy, not as a compliance requirement, create a mutually reinforcing cycle. Empowered and protective workers that drive productivity together with the employer's innovation and loyalty. In turn, these outcomes enhance the company's competitiveness, resilience, and long-term sustainability. To reinforce this commitment, at ECOP, we collaborate with trade unions, non-government and civil SEOs, and global partners such as the ILO to promote responsible business conduct and expand access to social protection. This partnership strengthened the implementation of fair labor practices, equitable working conditions, and enterprise resilience, paving the way for more inclusive and sustainable growth. You also mentioned about skills development in the Philippines. It's very important because until now, there is supply and demand mismatch. There are jobs that are difficult to fill because the products of the academe of the universities do not match with the demands of the market. So it was in this morning's discussion, there was mention of micro-learning, micro-credentialing, and recognition of prior learning, which are important right now because many companies do not look at degrees anymore. What courses did you finish? But you look at specific skills that the individual has to be able to perform a specific or particular task. And most of these employable skills are related to the raging technological revolution. I'm talking about the internet, artificial intelligence, for example. Thank you.
Thank you all for shedding light on how the private sector can truly operationalize its commitments to inclusive growth and social impact. Each of you have brought in a very diverse perspective, and I'm sure a lot of the audience members are going to take away incredible points with them beyond the stage today. Before I open the floor to interventions, would any of you like to make any closing remarks? Oh, we've covered everything.
Probably we did not cover everything. And I'm sure in this audience, people heard the African proverb quite a lot of times, which is, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And to me, this is something that unites us really in what we were sharing here. It's really about collaboration, making sure that your access and diversity targets are embedded into kind of your commercial strategies. And yeah, I just enjoyed the discussion a lot. So, and eager to hear some of the feedback from the audience and the questions perhaps.
Yes, with that, I'd like to move on to the interventions from the floor. I'd like to kindly remind anybody who speaks to stand up, and please keep it to the maximum of 2 or 3 minutes in interest of time. First, we'll hear from Mr. Luke Triangle, General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation, if he's around.
Yeah, I'm here behind.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So thank you very much for inviting me, first of all, and also giving me the floor. So I'm Luc Triangle, General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation, so the counterpart of the IOE and the counterpart of Roberto Soares. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I was really listening with a lot of attention and to the good examples that we have heard here. So first of all, let me tell you that I'm working with multinational companies, not in multinational companies, but with multinational companies for more than 30 years. So I've dealt with them on their social agenda, on their commitments, on their employee relations, and so on. So first of all, I'm also a board member of the UN Global Compact, 23,000 companies. We have done recently a research. 88% of all the companies in the UN Global Compact are not giving in on their sustainability agenda. And sustainability covers the environment, social and governance activities and policies of the companies. And I raise that number because we do have today a policy and a global environment which is not in favor of environment, on social and on governance, on diversity, on equality, on inclusion. So companies don't give up. And I think that's important because we are here in Doha with a political declaration talking about living wages, talking about equality, talking about social protection, all topics that have been raised here in the debate. Well, without the private sector, we will not succeed. I want to state that clearly. So I don't count on governments too much. I do count on them because they need to do something. But at the end of the day, it needs to be delivered in the private sector. So we have here excellent examples, but it's not only those four examples. There are thousands of other companies, multinational companies, but also small and medium-sized enterprises that are actually having the same policy. So I think it's really important to mention that without private sector, we cannot deliver on the outcome and on the next steps of the political declaration of today here. Secondly, I think I also heard in my work with global companies is the level playing field debate. We want to do it good, but our competitors are not having the same vision. So I think what the world needs is indeed also a global level playing field. And that requires, whether you like it or not, sometimes regulation. The EU has been speaking here before. The EU sets a number of standards. And I know that multinational companies, not only Europeans, are using the EU legislation to expand these standards to their global activities. And I think that's also important that we recognize the need for regulation, not red tape. Let's be very clear. I am very sensitive for all the administration that sometimes goes hand in hand with regulation. But we need to have some standards that are then also creating a level playing field for companies. Thirdly, the point that I also heard here, and which is also one of my key points always, is to be embedded in communities. Companies are not islands. They are part of communities. They are part of a society. So in that sense, and I'm not going to repeat what has been said by all four, is to have the contacts, to have the strategy, to have the partnerships with NGOs, with local communities, including also trade unions. And I thank Jose from the Philippines to raise the word trade unions because you are the only one. So I thank you for raising that, but take us also as partner in that. That's also our view as ITUC, that we are partners with you on what we are discussing here, and that is inclusive business solutions for having a greater social impact. And last but not least, it's about the global economy. The world is not changing anymore. We are all part of a global economy. The exposure is there. Social media are there. So, but it's not the reason why we need to do it, but it makes us indeed very vulnerable when we don't do it right. So you have a partner in trade unions on what you have been discussing here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Luke. Next, we'll hear from Mr. El Said Torki, Senior Advisor at the Federation of Egyptian Industries.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk in this important topic, which is scaling. In order to be able to scale inclusive business solutions for social impact, we need to create the whole ecosystem which allow the private sector to recognize and to implement and play its role in advancing social impact. This requires that we have a minimum level of trust and coordination in order to be able to create strategic partnerships. 20 years ago, I was advisor to the Minister of Investment in Egypt for CSR. And in one of my first meetings, I was very motivated to cooperate with the private sector. And I asked one of the companies, what can we do to help you? And 20 years were not enough to forget what he has said to me, that please leave us alone. Leave us alone. Do not intervene in our CSR activities. This because there weren't enough coordination. So there is no trust, and consequently there is no partnerships. At that time, like less than 5 companies and banks were involved in CSR. Inspired by the Millennium Development Goals in 2000, and then motivated and encouraged by the SDGs in 2015, we can say that now in Egypt, all the banks are working on not only CSR, but they moved from CSR to sustainable finance and sustainability, and trying to play the role in achieving SDGs. All the insurance companies, all the energy companies, and hundreds of multinationals and Egyptian companies in Egypt are now allocating hundreds of millions of dollars per year for CSR with its sustainable impact. The point is, and they are focusing on the real advancement of the social impact, social development, and the social development of the community, strengthening communities, fostering community resilience, promoting inclusion. So they are focusing mainly on the economic and social impact of youth, empowerment of youth, economic empowerment of youth through creating new job opportunities, sustainable new job opportunities. We realized that there is a huge gap between the education output in Egypt and the needed skills in the labor market. So the first and the most important difficult solution was to change radically the TVET education, the structure of the education and vocational training in Egypt. We have 1,280 vocational training schools in Egypt. 10 years ago, the only one company who started to create technological applied school, which is the new form of TVET schools, fully funded by the company. Now we have 128 schools fully funded by the private sector. Not only funded, but they participate in creating the curriculum of this training school, build the capacity of the teachers in cooperation with the Ministry of Education. So if we are missing trust 20 years ago, it is fully almost fully accomplished now with different type of ministries. So if we're talking about the role of private sector in Egypt to support the advancement of the social development, it is not only education or creating new job opportunities, but most of the CSR funds are allocated also for health related to hospitals, and renovating the small houses in the most vulnerable villages in Egypt, and also people with disabilities, women. So the point here is how we can create the sustainable structure which enable each stakeholder to play its role. At the Federation of Egyptian Industries, we have more than 120,000 member companies from 20 different industrial sectors, and we are trying to build the capacity of our members through awareness raising campaigns, position papers, studies, trainings, and conferences also. Each item of this play its role in motivating the private sector towards the sustainable required intervention. I have heard amazing interventions from the floor, and I congratulate Qatar for this very successful summit. But in order to maximize the benefit of this, what maybe the panelists can tell us the next steps, what tangible outcome that we can have and build on it after the summit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that's an incredibly important question. Though unfortunately we will not be able to, because we need to wrap up the session now. So, but we can, please feel free to mingle with the panelists right after the session and you'll get the answers. Thank you all for being such an incredible audience today and joining us in on this chat. I'd like to just have a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya, and thank you, the panelists, for a really inspiring discussion. And the emphasis on diversity was extremely important. And Hafsa, thank you very much for sharing your story about your brother. It was very touching. Nobody's. Almost in every session, there has been a reference to AI. So it's no wonder that we're going to have a keynote speech about that particular subject and how business can harness artificial intelligence for inclusive social development. And I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Nasruddin Gouami, Regional Head of Government Affairs and Public Policy at Google, to deliver this speech. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know it's the end of the day. Batteries are low. We want all, to go back to our hotel rooms to get some rest. I'm going to try to be super quick. Before I started preparing this speech, Alia actually, did an amazing job, and she contacted me and she asked me about something. I was wondering. Oh, it's fine. I'm gonna use this one. Probably in our world, you all know that, we are super busy. Or maybe, I don't know. You can tell me. So I was wondering what would be the best way for me to get a speech drafted. I asked my super wonderful assistant that I call Gemini. Okay. And I said, listen, I'm going to address a super brilliant audience today, and don't make me look ridiculous, please. So she prepared something for me. So I'm going to share it with you today. But before that, I just want to highlight something. I don't know, Hafsa, if you are still here, I just want to thank you so much for your contribution and for sharing your story. Just today in Dubai, we are running a wonderful workshop for people with special needs and for senior people. So we're going to educate them more about, using the technology. So we're trying to make sure and working with other partners like you to make sure that no one is left behind. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. So very quickly, so it's an immense privilege, to be here today at the private sector forum dedicated to this critical mission, which is business for social development. This theme affirms today a core truth. Business is a powerful engine for social development, essential for job creation, reducing inequality, and advancing sustainable, equitable economies. In today's rapidly evolving landscape, Our role is clear. We must ensure that profound economic change driven by technology, particularly artificial intelligence, delivers positive and inclusive social transformation. This is extremely important. AI is not just a tool for efficiency, it's a generational opportunity to modernize governance and leapfrog traditional development pathways. Our research today suggests that scaling AI adoption in the public sector specifically could increase real GDP by 4% and reduce government fiscal deficits by as much as 20% by 2035. It's very, very soon. These are tangible gains that free up some fiscal space to invest in social development, such as healthcare and education. To drive truly inclusive social development, we must focus on scaling capability across the interconnected pillars. And here I'm going to talk briefly about 4 big pillars. First and foremost, responsible policy. To build inclusive futures, AI must be developed and deployed responsibly. This is why years ago, we at Google established our own AI principles, grounded in human rights and safety to guide our work. But no single company or government can do this alone. It's impossible. We live in one world, we live in the same societies, so we need to act together. Building trust requires a multi-stakeholder partnership. We must work together, private sector, public sector, and civil society, to create thoughtful, pro-innovation governance frameworks that protect the public while encouraging the breakthroughs that solve our biggest social challenges. The second pillar, which is inclusive infrastructure. AI doesn't live in the cloud, although, we're talking about cloud technology, but it runs on a physical, scalable, and secure foundation. You cannot have an AI revolution without digital infrastructure. At the recent World Bank fall meetings, we announced a 5-year strategic alliance to accelerate deployment of digital public infrastructure in emerging markets. This isn't just about, servers. The collaboration aims to give 100 million of citizens simplified access to essential government services using Gemini-powered AI tools or agents. They can interact within over 40 languages, ensuring both accessibility and equity. The third key pillar, which is capable people. Infrastructure is the how, but skills are the who. That's me, not Gemini. Skills determine whether AI can truly enter and thrive within a public administration or a local economy. We must invest in people at every level. At the recent UN General Assembly, we took definitive steps to build this capability. We launched a 1 million partnership with the International Telecommunication Union and Will I Am's Foundation for an AI and robotics skilling program for students across Africa. We are providing free 1-year subscriptions to the Google AI Pro plan to millions of college students across 8 African countries, helping to prevent the AI divide. And we committed an additional $9 million in funding for African universities to accelerate and nurture local AI talent. We are not just exporting technology. We are investing in local talent and innovators who will build the future of their own communities. Finally, technological innovation. This is where policy, infrastructure, and skills come together to solve real-world problems. The challenge is staggering. Emerging markets face 4.5 billion people lacking essential services and a projected shortage of 11 million health workers by 2030. AI offers a scalable way to close these gaps, to act as a force of multiplier for doctors and nurses on the ground. We are seeing it provide life-saving support. Just to give you very brief and quick examples. Clinical support. In Indonesia, for example, hospitals are piloting Google Cloud's MedLM, an AI model fine-tuned for clinical data. It helps summarize records and triage information, directly addressing clinician shortages and giving doctors back their most valuable resource, which is time with their patients. And we are accelerating drug discoveries. Google DeepMind's AlphaFold has made over 200 million protein 3D structures freely available for scientists. This is something that could take them 1 billion years to discover this. Can you imagine? And the aim is to help them for research and supercharging the hand for new medicines. This same innovative power is being applied to another social challenge, climate change. The world's most vulnerable populations are often the most exposed to climate change and climate shocks. Here, AI is moving from a predictive tool to a protective one. Our AI-powered flood forecasting initiatives now covers over 80 countries, sending early warning alerts to hundreds of millions of people, giving them time to get to safety. In agriculture, our partners are using AI to analyze satellite imagery, helping smaller farmers in places like Senegal and India increase crop yields, conserve water, and build resilience against drought. Ladies and gentlemen, the private sector is the engine of the growth, innovation, and job creation. Our commitment at this summit must be clear. We must align that engine with the objectives of eradicating poverty, generating productive employment, and advancing social integration. By focusing on inclusive infrastructure, targeted skilling, and high-impact AI use cases from global health to climate change, we hope, inshallah, we can build the future where technology progress is truly synonymous with social equity. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Guami. And thanks to your assistant. What's her name? Gemini? Is that? I guess we all know who that is. But it was really food for thought. Thank you very much. And now it's time for our final panel. And it's under the title of Inclusive and Sustainable Finance for Social Development. It focuses on how financial systems and partnerships can expand access to opportunities for entrepreneurs and communities. Please join me in welcoming my colleague, Sarah Rashid from Al Jazeera, and our panelists. Please make your way to the podium. Ms. Oman Okpoma Olaya, Regional Investment Lead for East and Southern Africa and the Arab States region, UN Capital Development Fund. Also, Ms. Gita Sabarawal, UN Resident Coordinator in Indonesia, and Mr. Morten Luge Lauritsen, Head of UN Partnership and International Finance Corporation, IFC, and Ms. Helen Follen, CEO and founder of Alinea Ireland. Welcome all, and I wish you a very successful panel.
So I would like to welcome you again. I'm enjoying all the panels before, and I hope you'll enjoy the last one. I know that we explore through the day and the panels or the powerful maybe drive for social development and how we can enable SMEs and entrepreneurs, especially women, youth. We discuss all of these things, but we still yet have lots of ideas, lots of actually things that happened on the ground and people benefit from. I know that you're drained and your batteries is low, but stay with us. And maybe we'll enjoy a very good conversation here. So I am going to start with Amon. I'm pronouncing it right. Okay. Based on UNCDF's experience in Africa and the Middle East, what approaches to inclusive finance and SMEs support have worked well, and where have challenges or shortcomings emerged? It's working, I think.
Thank you. No, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you once again. So my name is Omon. I work with United Nations Capital Development Fund. UNCDF is one of the UN agencies within the UN family. And we have a very unique mandate that was given to us by the General Assembly, which is really to unlock public and private capital, make impact capital work for development. So that's the primary objective. Now, if you unpack that a little bit, before I go to your question, is really the uniqueness of UNCDF as an entity. So UNCDF is a non-credit rated agency. So what that means is that we are able to take on significant amounts of risk. And that significant amount of risk allows us to really create markets and serve the underserved. So that really drives us at the back of inclusive finance. Now, to go into your question, what has worked for UNCDF is really partnerships, first and foremost. And to be specific in terms of partnerships is our strategic partnerships with local financial institutions, because they bear a number of advantages, not just for UNCDF's objective, but also for development as a whole. Now, working with local financial institutions allows us to efficiently use the limited capital that we have. UNCDF is 100% grant-funded institution, and as you know, ODA is declining, grants is declining, so there's an urgency to use grant capital more efficiently. So working with local financial institution really allows us to be more efficient in the way that we use capital. There's also market creation when we partner with local financial institutions. There's also leverage. We're able to leverage on capital from, mobilize capital from the private sector. And we're doing this in a number of ways in Africa and Middle East, like you said. In Africa, we work with a number of local financial institutions from addressing lack of access to finance or affordable finance for coaching service providers, for example, in Kenya, to supporting agribusinesses in Rwanda, to supporting MSMEs in Malawi. And even in the Middle East, we have, where at the end of this year, we are also providing a guarantee in two layers. So the first layer is providing a guarantee directly through DFIs to unlock capital to MSMEs in Palestine. But also, we're also working directly with local financial institutions to unlock capital to MSMEs. So that partnership through financial institutions has worked significantly for UNCDF so that we can efficiently use our capital. Now, in terms of what has been, as you said, shortcomings, I think the shortcomings are more like lessons learned for us. And one of the things is the urgency and the relevance of technical assistance. That's what we've seen. And in technical assistance is more on ensuring that there are bankable pipelines, because what we've seen is that the capital is out there, but the adequate risk mitigation required to unlock that capital and the bankability of the pipeline becomes a critical issue. So investing in bankable pipeline is something that we're doing. And it's not just TA to SMEs. That's where people often forget. It's TAs to SMEs, but it's also TAs to financial institutions. Because we want financial institutions to have tailor-fit financial products to be able to lend to these MSMEs. So it's not enough to give the risk mitigation tools. It's not enough to inject capital to this financial institution, but we need to also invest in designing and creating tailored financial products for these financial institutions so that they can continue to serve the underserved even after our intervention. So that's what I would highlight as shortcomings. And at UNCDF, we are addressing that in partnership with UNDP. We also have investment grants within UNCDF, which we use in a catalytic way to develop this bankable pipeline so that they are able to attract financing from financial institutions. Thank you.
So, thank you. I think from here, I'm gonna go to Mr. Morton. Yeah, and I want to know how is IFC as part of the World Bank Group working to scale private sector investment that advance social development. I would like also to know how you can expand and exclude how can you expand finance opportunities for SMEs and entrepreneurs, or particularly those who led by women or youth or older persons, you know, so how you can actually achieve to help in this area.
Thank you. No, I'm very happy to address the how. I'm from IFC, that's the private sector part of the World Bank Group. There's also an important why, if I may say just a few words on the why, because I think what we see from the World Bank Group is also that jobs is really a key development agenda. So I think we really see that there is a key demographic change happening, unfolding before our eyes. So what the numbers show, just to set it in perspective, is that if we look towards 2050, which is a long way away, but there we will have around 85% of people in the world living in what we today call developing countries or emerging markets. And if we look a little less into the future, just 10 years, 15 years, what we see is that there are 1.2 billion young people coming into the workforce. And there is not enough jobs. There is a big jobs gap, and there are only around, according to the trends, 400 million jobs. So I think for the World Bank Group and for IFC, it's really about creating those good and better jobs, right? And bringing the capital, the finance, but also the training into it. So there we see on the how, we see a threefold approach. We see that, and this talks to the entire World Bank Group. We see that there is foundational infrastructure. So you need the kind of things that connect the markets, right? Jobs or ports, roads, everything, telecommunication, right? That is infrastructure. And then you need the second, you need the enabling environment. You need to fix the regulations. You need to have the right policies in place to create that business environment that will enable that job creation. And then my institution comes in, which is around the capital mobilization, right? So there we have a broad variety of things and innovation. So it's, of course, lending, it's equity, it's guarantees, it's and now our newest efforts on securitization. So there, and those things are also very much also targeted towards the medium and small enterprises. So for last year and here, I think really a lot of the jobs are in those companies. If we look at Africa, it's 90% of the jobs. It's 90% of the companies. It's 70% of the jobs, and 70% of those companies really need the financing to go. So IFC, and this is on the how, has set up an MSME platform last year, $4 billion, where we also target women entrepreneurs, especially, and we have lending, we have many different varieties of instruments to target those jobs and especially the women.
Ms. Helen, maybe this question will be for you. Are there particular examples from your work that demonstrate how inclusive finance can enable both economic participation and innovation led by or led development?
I think that's on now. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Helen, and I've travelled from Ireland to be with you this week. I'm very glad to be here to be part of this important conversation. I'm a female founder and an entrepreneur, and my clients come to me when they have a problem. Their governments, their economic development agencies, their universities and research centres, and corporations. And they are looking for what Morton is speaking about, new ideas, new businesses, and to encourage entrepreneurs. So that's my company, is we provide that really important foundational support to new venture development. But I thought today a really interesting case study for everyone in the room would be the approach that we have taken in Ireland since 2012 to support female founders. It was a shock to us all in 2012 to discover that only 7% of our high potential startups, so those were obviously the startups at the top of the funnel, had a female founder or co-founder in the business. And so we did a lot of research to understand the barriers, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with for women, which center around lack of confidence, appetite for risk, access to networks, access to funding, the challenges of childcare and family on top of trying to build a business. And based on that, we developed a 4-pillar approach to support women across the island, across the Republic of Ireland. And funding was just one piece of that. The first pillar was around programs and building that, those competencies and that capability to encourage women to be more confident in setting up a business. So those ranged from capability programs for women before they would even think about starting a business to structured ideation, pre-acceleration and acceleration type programs. And all of those, for most of those programs, funding is not necessarily required. It's really about structuring an idea, validating that there is problem solution fit, and that there is a global market need. We're a very small country in Ireland, so we have to look always for those export potential businesses. So foundation, pillar number 1 was around programming. Pillar number 2, funding, of course. And interestingly, we found that women did not step forward when there was general calls for funding applications. I'm sure I'm seeing some nodding heads in the audience. And so what we did was we set up specific funding calls for women, which were hugely oversubscribed. And in fact, that caused another problem because women waited for those calls and made those calls then super competitive because they were, they thought they were in a safer space competing against each other for the funding. But that proved really attractive to women to apply for funding. The third pillar was built around building out those networks and role models. So national road shows where there would be large events where we would bring together a couple of hundred women, and there would be guest speakers, panels such as this afternoon, where they could see role models, and if they could see it, they could be it. And that proved really encouraging for them. And that's something that we see a lot happening across our economic development agencies across the country. And then finally, it was around recognition and, recognition and awards. And so there are a range of different types of programs and recognitions where, again, we're highlighting the successful endeavors of women at every stage of the startup journey. So, that was back in 2012, and we've been nothing if not consistent in the time since then, now 12 years. But last year, 37% of our high potential startup companies were being led or co-founded by women. And so it is a model that has really worked for us as a country. And, we continue to, to invest in better understanding what the needs of women are and developing tailored solutions and programs and interventions that are going to work for them. And as I say, we've been absolutely delighted with the type of results that we've seen, going from that 7% in 2012 to 37% in 2024.
That's really amazing. But yet I would like to keep the mic with you and ask, from your experience, what are the most effective ways to connect innovation and entrepreneurship so that women's ideas can reach to the market and create sustainable? I know you've been through it, you've said it so, but what was the successful ways that you did, and maybe you can share the experience with us?
I think for women, education really matters. Knowledge is important. They can't wing it when they stand up in front of an investor or asking for money. They have to understand what it is they're saying. And so they tend to be super cautious even in their ask for investment. There are grants in Ireland where there's up to 250,000 euros available to them. A lot of the time they might apply for 167,200 euros when there is 250,000 available. So part of that, I think, comes from a lack of confidence. In terms of trying to build interventions that work, certainly we look at how early stage entrepreneurship sits within the lives of the women that we're working with. And that's everything from younger entrepreneurs to middle-aged women who've got families and children, and even people who have retired and are now coming back and want to create a new business after years of working in industry with lots of experience and expertise. So when we structure some of our interventions, our programs, they don't start until after the school run in the morning. So everybody gets a chance to go drop off the kids, come back. We integrate, dare I say it, a great meditation at the beginning of the workshop, because we know mothers have been up since 7. They've fed their children. They've got them dressed. They've dropped them to school. They've come back. And now we're asking them to catch their breath and launch straight into, how to conduct customer discovery. So in incorporating health and well-being so that they can manage this for the long run is really important. I think also, meeting them where they are in terms of times and schedules. So, we do ask them to, we've moved a lot of our in-person activities online because they told us it was easier for them to do, take care of family, responsibilities and then jump on a call at 9:30 and be finished by 12:30 or 1 so that they could then go to the school pickup. So we've moved to a hybrid model where we do some in person and a lot of online training, but incorporating ways for them to build out their networks. And things like scheduling mentor sessions. We tend to schedule those in the evening. Sometimes that could be at 9 o'clock at night. It could be on a Saturday. It could be on a Sunday. Working outside of traditional, perceived hours for training, because we know that, they're sitting down at 9 o'clock at night when their children have gone to bed and they need, that's when they have time to focus on their business and to not have somebody asking for a glass of milk or jumping on their knee or whatever it is. So I think some of it has been quite practical. But then I think also the resources that, both at regional and national level, the resources have been quite dovetailed for female founders. So you can access small micro grants at your local, in your local area. And then that escalates to larger enterprise development agencies like Enterprise Ireland, which is our export-driven government agency, where there are larger funds and they're an investor in early stage startups.
Okay, so I think I'm going to ask about the initiatives and how can we scale them or like what's the key factors of parameters to ensure that initiatives are scalable and sustainable? This question is for you, Ms. Geeta, if you don't mind. Just we have a lot of initiatives, and we want to know how can we measure or scale their sustainability.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm going to start off by saying I'm the UN resident coordinator in Indonesia. I bring the UN system together at the country level. And my job is to make sure that we reimagine a bold shift in what the UN does in an upper middle income country context like Indonesia. And I want to start off I want to be very brief, right? While being brief, I want to kickstart by setting the context in very broad brush terms. First, Indonesia is the leader in blended finance. It's got a deep and dynamic private sector, which contributes to over 80% of the GDP of the country, creates 90% of the jobs. And the third thing that you need to know about Indonesia is it is consistently comes out on the top on the World Giving Survey. Very generous society, which translates into your zakat and the wakaf. Big, right? $27 billion is what it consists of, right? Just to give you a feel. That's the context that we are operating in. As the UN system, what is it that we are doing to scale up sustainable development? We need to work closely with the private sector to mobilize financing. It's not going to come purely from governments. Governments are fiscally stressed, right? In this bold shift, there are 4 pathways that we are looking at. The first pathway is to work very closely with the government to help them develop sustainability-linked bonds, which allows them to mobilize capital, which goes towards programs like vocational training, immunization, scholarships, amongst others, right? Marine protection, ecosystems, right? And we mobilized close to $12.6 billion over the past 5 years, right? And this is private capital flowing in, but managed by governments. The second thing that we've done, we've used our private sector arm, UN's private sector arm, which is the Global Compacts, right? I'm sure we've got Global Compact colleagues here. We've got a network in Indonesia, which brings 170 private sector players together. They have a revenue base of $263 billion, right? We work with them. And what do we do with them? We are helping them develop corporate SDG bonds, which means mobilize financing, which goes towards ESG-related investments. The first corporate bond that we did mobilized $43 million for low-income housing, right? Green housing. The third thing that we do is we work with domestic banks. Our partners, current partners, we've got 5 domestic banks, and we are helping them put in place sustainable plans, sustainable financing plans, which means that with every percentage shift in the direction of ESG, we are able to unlock $1.23 billion. This doesn't mean $1.23 billion flows through the UN system. No, it means these monies become available in support of the green transition in country. And fourth pathway is about faith-based financing. And we've got the UN system that engages with the wakaf and the zakat funds at the subnational level, at the provincial level, to see how we can direct some of this monies towards households for drinking water and sanitation. Last year, we managed to mobilize $13.8 million through both zakat and wakaf for drinking water and sanitation in 2 provinces of the country, right? And this is what we want to be doing more of. This is about scaling up sustainability at scale.
Thank you so much. So from that, maybe what in what enabling conditions for both the public and the private sector are most needed to foster innovation and expand access to finance and achieve measurable and social and economic impact? That's to you, Ms. Martin. Yes. Mr. Martin, sorry. Yes.
It's to me. Okay.
Yeah, it's to me, sorry. Because from that, I wanted to just go to how we can ensure it on, as she mentioned, like the Zakat and the UN funding. So.
Yeah. No, I think there's a variety, as I said, there is no one single solution to how you mobilize private capital. So it is really about these, to level the playing field on regulation, right? Creating that conducive environment, but then also having the right instrument base to do it. And there IFC is just we are the biggest MDB private sector oriented investor globally. So, and also the leader on blended finance. And I think blended finance is something you use in a particular circumstance when you need to de-risk a market, right? If there is a frontier and it's a risky investment and you need to give it the last push and demonstrate that this can commercially be done in the future. So you don't go into a blended finance transaction if you don't have that notion that this is something that in time can commercially handle, be sustainable, right? But it cannot be that without a little push and a little help. And there you need to be very disciplined in how you use, which is essentially donor money to put into the equation with, in this case, IFC's own funds, right? So there we have a strong focus on using minimum concessionality and being very transparent about how we use the money. So I think in essence, transparency and using that discipline and having those partnerships with others, which you also framed in the beginning of our conversation. How do you make this into something where you make different parts of the ecosystem, the private sector and the banks work together, but also the UN and MDBs, how we work together around challenges. So I think that is, there is no one single easy answer to how you fix everything, but I think that free piece approach we have from the World Bank Group can make it work.
That's amazing. And Omon, it's the same question maybe for you. How can we create this a scalable and sustainable financing solution that drive both economic growth and positive social impact? It's the same thing. How can scale it? How we can manage it maybe?
No, thank you. Thank you very much. So here we're talking about I would look at it as it's two sectors, but it's also two stakeholders here. We're talking about public sector and we're talking about private sector. And when you look at the public and the private sector, each stakeholder has its own, I would say, its own risk appetite, its own interests, right? When you look at the public sector's capital has competing priorities. There might be more risk they can take, but it's competing priorities. But if you look at the private sector, the private sector has more capital, but the risk in terms of the level of risk they can take is minimal. And the reason why is because the private sector would require more de-risking solutions to protect their own capital, because private sector entities are more credit risk rated agencies. But the beauty of this is really the blend between the public and the private sector. The public sector, you can use that, the capital from the public sector in a more catalytic way, right? But the private sector, you can use the capital from the private sector to mobilize additional funding, to create the leverage that you need. Now, the blend is the beauty between the blend is really being able to mix at the right, amounts of capital from the public and the private sector to achieve the development objective. So in summary, really for me is the blend between the public and the private sector at optimum level would allow us to achieve the development objective while taking into consideration the risk in which each stakeholder is able to take, the level of risk and the level of risk mitigation required to unlock the capital from the private sector.
I think we're like summing up the ideas. So I would like to know if anyone of you had any ideas or want to share with the audience any of insightful thoughts by the end of this session, or maybe I missed a question or something. So would you like to add something? Yes, please.
Well, just a short, I think it's always examples speak their own language. So now I see the ILO Director General has joined us. And I would just like to refer to the good example that the Swiss State Secretary gave earlier today in her keynote about, and that was in the garment sector, where we've had the pleasure of working closely with ILO in the Better Work program. And I think just to give a sense of, and that is a variety of efforts on how you improve labor standards, how you do training, how you do occupational health in factories. So the numbers are, I think, that it can be done, and that we, since we started that initiative with ILO, have reached around 3.5 million workers, and I would say of those, the vast majority are women. So that's an example I'm happy to share.
Thank you. Would you like to? Yes.
No, thank you. Maybe I'll follow up on what he has said in terms of a concrete case study that we have in Afghanistan, if you allow me. So at UNCDF, what we did in Afghanistan, and we worked in collaboration with our partner UN agency, UNDP, is to provide access to finance to MSMEs, primarily owned by women in Afghanistan. So what UNCDF did was to provide a partial credit risk guarantee to Afghanistan Credit Guarantee Fund that allowed them to also provide a form of a re-guarantee to local financial institutions in Afghanistan. And this unlocked significant amounts of capital to MSMEs. Now, to go into the numbers itself, UNCDF deployed a guarantee of $1 million. And this unlocked $20 million from the local financial institutions in Afghanistan. So that's automatically a 20x leverage. This guarantee is live, is active for almost 1 year. And you won't believe that the NPL for this portfolio is less than 2%. Now, if you take that out, ordinarily there's a high level of perceived risk. And it's very difficult to support these MSMEs in accessing financing. So when we talk about inclusive finance, we're talking about women, right? We're talking about crisis context, but it's with the right de-risking institutions that is able to take the first level of risk that is created and established to absorb significant amounts of risk, which is UNCDF. So we were able to enter this market, deploy this guarantee, boost and enhance the financial institutions, local financial institutions in Afghanistan, and support these MSMEs with access to finance. So think about the numbers, $1 million to unlock capital from the local financial institution in Afghanistan of $20 million. That's the 1 to 20 leverage. You know, I mean, we had credit risk rating agencies that said, this is not going to work. This market is too risky. But if we really want to drive inclusive financing, these are the type of risk that UNCDF has been set up to take. And these are the type of different types of case studies that we have. But I just really wanted to share that in the context of today's discussion. Thank you.
That's really amazing. And yeah, yes.
I just wanted to say finally is we've got to back brave. And brave people are people who are trying to change things. The world is changing at the speed of ideas, and we need people that are going to see the world differently, that are going to create new businesses that we haven't even thought of, and create jobs and economic empowerment for people around the world. So it's phenomenal to hear such an amazing case study, and so bravo.
Very, very quickly. I mean, I wanted to come in more with the soft end of the spectrum, right? You've heard the hard voices here.
Yes.
I wanted to end by saying relationships matter. Investing in relationships, deep relationships of trust with government, with private sector, with other stakeholders is extremely critical for making exactly what everyone spoke about possible. Because it is these relationships that create the ecosystem to take risks that you mentioned, right? And for innovation.
But how can we really create these kind of relationship, the trusts between the private and the governmental, to achieve these kind of things? I know we already there are some examples, and it's not easy, but how to ease things up, how to reach to this level, how to invite more people to be a part of it.
I mean, for the UN system in country, the premise of our engagement is deep relationships of trust. Because we are only as good as the partnerships that we foster. We cannot operate without partnerships, right? So that's the soft end. That's what I said. That's a soft power that we can bring to bear alongside the hard technical assistance, which comes from players like UNCDF, that comes from players like ILO, FAO, the entire set of multilateral of the UN family. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate your insight. I will leave it now for intervention. If anyone has any question or share an idea with us, that will be, you're most welcome. I think we still have time. We don't have time. So, okay. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to join this conversation. Thank you. I want to thank everyone to stay till now. Thank you so much. And if anyone, okay, so that's it for today.
Thank you very much to Sarah, and thank you for the panelists for sharing the case studies, the stories and experiences. And now it's time for a final keynote address. Building Bridges for Better Lives, Multilateralism, Driving Social and Economic Empowerment. And it's my honor to introduce Mr. Gilbert Hangbo, Director General of the International Labour Organization, who will deliver the keynote address. Please.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being patient and staying till the end. Just listening to the last part of the panel just finished, and listening to both colleagues from UNCDF and IFC, I felt that is a very good segue to what the message that I'm trying to pass on to this forum. And, I don't think I'm going to say things that you don't know. So again, let me apologize forehead, given particularly the fact that we all know that the economy is, the current economy, we do have some, what we believe in ILO, some headwinds. With a change that the whole process, you look at AI or the technology, all those very rapid, fast changing environment in which we find ourselves these days. And our recent history has proven that no single country, no single community, institution, or company can navigate the current challenges and opportunities in isolation. So in this interconnected and interdependent world, where social development and prosperity have never been so dependent on each other and dependent on cooperation, international cooperation, multilateralism, we really do not have the option. Obviously, for somebody that is from the UN system preaching for multilateralism, you might find me biased, but j'assume. I usually tell colleagues that, sometimes it happens in some cities where there will be some events by the police that will generate a lot of criticism, a lot of sharp criticism, but nobody has ever said that we do not need the police. We always need the police. So it's a little bit the UN system. We have to be humble enough to have some kind of introspection, to accept the need to reform, because the need is really there. At the same token, the more we accept that need, the more we could make the case for multilateralism 2.0, as Amina Mohammed will say. Today, the multilateral system, including ourselves, the ILO, we do believe that we know that in face of the current geopolitical tension, the current debate on trade, globalization, and its nexus with social justice is its nexus with the importance of ensuring that the inequalities are not widening, trying to minimizing or keeping them, freezing the level of the gaps, is going to depend on what we do with the multilateralism that we all cherish. So for us to deliver on this, our multilateral architecture itself must adapt, must evolve, not as fixing just here and there, as I believe we have done in the past, but as a dynamic engine of collective action for the future. Oh, I didn't see the DSD, so I'm sorry I call your name without the on that. We ourselves, the ILO. Yes, we like to say that we're one of the oldest institutions created in 1919. But, I always like to remind all of us what was said in 1919, because we talk about social justice. People say that the Director General said, no, I don't have anything to do with that. It was already in the Constitution in 1919, and that universal and lasting peace can only be established based on a social justice. And in 44, what we call the Philadelphia Declaration, again, made it, it's what, a page and a half, Philadelphia Declaration. Some of you, if you have not read it, please just Google it and read it. Remind us that poverty everywhere is a threat to prosperity. Poverty anywhere is a threat to prosperity everywhere on that. So we have to, all of us, come together to really ensure that we redefine the multilateral system, bridging different interests together. And on that, I really want to salute the UN Compact, the IOE, and the work that has been happening for many years now. It's not new in bridging that gap. Now, although, as I said, I recognize that our system needs to be reformed, I also believe I'm a witness of the progress that has been made in the last 20 years in the system, except that that progress is not sufficient enough or not necessarily adapted to the current realities. We must recognize that the private sector is a meaningful and substantive contribution, requiring an enabling environment to be able to thrive, to be able to create the wealth and create the jobs, productive jobs that we desperately need to respond to the current Gen Z expectations. Business and the multilateral system need to continue to work together to maximize inclusive growth, promote the sustainable development, and creating the future job. Hence, our discussion last ILC of the report, where we trying to make the case for the nexus between the jobs, the economic growth, and the rights. And we do believe in ILO that the three are not mutually exclusive. To the contrary, they reinforce each other, and we making the case that within this context of reforming the multilateral system, we need to keep in mind the centrality of the job creation, sustainable job creation in the medium and long-term piece that is required for business to thrive. Let me just end up by again remind ourselves that although we know that the current environment is a challenging one, from where I come from my own perspective, is also full of opportunities. While we look at a lot of issues that we have on the table, I'm talking about the living wage. I'm trying to use those that will wake you up from the business community. The living wages, the platform economy, that you have a lot of debate. But I want to end up by saying that debate in itself is healthy. We need that debate so we can make progress. So I don't look at that at all as an issue. Sometimes people think, oh, we have problem now. So there's no problem. It's through that dialogue, through that social dialogue, that we make progress. And I think if that social dialogue can become a practice everywhere in all sectors, I think this world will be much more peaceful. Thank you.
And isn't that what we all hope for? A much more peaceful world. Thank you so much, Mr. Hangbu, for this powerful call to collective action. Thank you so much. And now I would like to invite Her Excellency Ms. Amina Mohammed to close today's forum. And we're very honored to have you with us, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. Please.
And the session is closed. Gilbert, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and many friends that I see today, I'm sure this has been a huge day for many, built on the last couple and especially yesterday. But let me begin by expressing my deep gratitude to my colleagues, the co-hosts, UN DESA and UN Global Compact, but also the International Organization of Employers for bringing everyone together, every panelist, speaker, participant. And I know that your insights and commitment to this forum was what it was meant to be. And so you've got a lot of homework to take out with you. I know that in many of these rooms, and I've been in quite a few of them today, the energy and the honest conversations and the solutions that have been proffered have been genuine. This is people with commitment coming to a social summit that builds on 3 decades after Copenhagen. And we're certainly not here to say that we're going to repeat old promises. That for sure shouldn't be what we take out of the room. But we are, because business leaders like yourself in this room understand some of the fundamentals. And business can be the most powerful engine for social development. But I believe only when it's guided by principles that put people and planet at the center, and that we're not getting the profits on the back of them. And I think that that's been a conversation, a difficult one between the UN and business for a long time. For many years, we talked past each other. You know, we were the righteous and you were the profitable ones. But I think today there's a recognition that we're not going to be able to do this without creating and designing and understanding each other's language, because it is profitable for everyone. So today, I think we have revealed 4 truths that I think we cannot afford to ignore. They are principles that should guide everything we do as we leave Doha. The first, and as I was reading through this again, skills without markets are promises we can't keep. It reminded me of my aunt, who put an awful lot of energy, effort, and everything that she had into my cousin's education. And at the end of the day, out he came, and she too, came from an education system that didn't give them a job. And she just couldn't understand, because in her generation, when people went to school, they left and there was a job. And if there was not a job, there was a livelihood. And today, more and more often, people are leaving the education system, for which we say is the cornerstone of every nation, without a job, without a future. And the ones that are available are not the ones we want, because those are the ones that we have recruiters, certainly in the Sahel, and those recruiters are terrorists. And this really does matter. When we speak about the investment in development for a more peaceful world, it's a serious investment in economies, which cannot just perform on fresh air or good wishes or commitments that are made over 30 years. And I think that we need to think more clearly in an integrated agenda like this SDGs, that when we speak to markets, that we are looking to see what sort of skill sets, what education system, what curriculum do we need to make sure that those markets thrive, and that people also achieve their ambitions, they achieve the possibilities and the potentials we talk about in every country. So we really do need to be preparing people for jobs, but also really the opportunities of a very new environment with the new event of the technology that we are seeing. And we talk about transforming education. Education will never be the same again with the technology that we have. And today we see very often women who've never had any education, and yet here they are with financial services, with e-commerce. I mean, it's quite incredible what you see in many of our developing countries today. So we have to reconcile that, the skills and the market engagement. The second is that responsible business conduct, of course, it builds the world your business needs. We heard compelling examples today of companies embedding human rights into operations, engaging with workers, ensuring decent work and living wages across supply chains, and letting environmental standards guide their decisions. What these stories revealed is that when the work environment is a fair one, a just one, when we invest in labor rights, fair wages, safe conditions, we do enhance productivity, and we do strengthen the foundation of the businesses you stand on. This is where we have successful economies, and yet somehow that transition in developing economies is not happening. It's almost as though you can have a quick fix, and yet we have not created the environment for that. So we do need to lay stronger foundations for stable societies and ensure that we do have labor rights and human rights are at the center of this. The 10 principles of the Global Compact on human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption, they do provide a roadmap. In fact, it's been informed by yourselves. The third truth, inclusive business models scale because they are profitable and not because they're just nice to have. And I think that that's a big lesson for us in the UN, is that we've got to connect with that and the work that we do at the country level. The companies making real impact aren't treating inclusion as a corporate social responsibility box ticking exercise. It's part of the DNA and their core business, and the models succeed because they're solving real problems for real people. And when we're scaling solutions that generate inclusive employment, including addressing the needs of workers in the informal economy, we are reducing vulnerabilities across communities and societies, and that's smart business, but it's also a much more stable environment, a much more peaceful environment. Fourth and finally, finance flows to what we value. So let's amplify those values. Small and medium enterprises are the backbone of most economies, and yet so many, especially those that are led by women, young people, people with disabilities, older persons, marginalized groups, often those you don't see, can't access the capital that they need to grow. They're allowed to grow to a certain cap and that's it. Everything else is somebody else's growth. Technology is changing that. I just said that the woman entrepreneur in a rural village can now access credit through her mobile phone. But so too can a young innovator sell products directly to customers halfway around the world, crossing borders through e-commerce. Financial literacy that once required a bank branch now reaches people wherever they are. Technology isn't just bridging divides, it is creating opportunities that haven't existed before, lowering the barriers that once kept millions locked out. So when we do expand financial inclusion, when we align investment with social objectives, use blended finance and impact investing to channel resources towards enterprises that deliver economic and social returns, we are unlocking growth that has been sitting there and waiting. So here's what we have to do when we leave Doha. Before going beyond acknowledging these truths and making them the principles that drive our actions, we do need to dig deeper. This is a very complex world. I think Gilbert just told us it's not easy out there. And the shifting sands are shifting fast for very many people. But we do need to connect education systems today and tomorrow's labor markets, make responsible conduct non-negotiable across our operations, scale the inclusive models that are profitable, open up finance to entrepreneurs who will drive the next wave of growth. And that is, I hear there's a Gen something that somebody talks about, but I understood that it goes from the millennials to the Gen Zs to the Gen Alphas and that they continue. But it is talking about people under the age of 35. It's really important that we get that going because they are connecting so much quicker than we've ever imagined. And if we don't connect them in the journey that we have to aspire for the many, many frameworks and promises that we've made, then we will leave a lot of people behind, but we will come round again to pay for it. The Doha Political Declaration calls us for renewed solidarity and collaboration. And in practice, that just means every constituency as we walk into an economy, into an environment, into a society, business, government, civil society, the UN, all of us working together, acknowledging that the final truth that underscores everything that we've discussed today is none of us can do this alone. The forum should be a launch pad. I hope that it will be to make sure that we deliver. And the next time that we gather, and it's not going to be very long as a multilateral system, it's up the road in Belém at COP30. And the discussions we will have there will be a different kind of a discussion. People think it's disconnected from the social agenda, but the environmental agenda is that other strand of our DNA for sustainable development. Yes, there's the economy, there's a social agenda, but there's environment one. And science and the evidence shows us that we're not doing too well by that. The good thing is that when we go to COP this year, whereas it's always been governments that go, and on the sidelines have been civil society and the rest of the world, this time in Belém, it's actually many from government, many from private sector, civil society, and young people who are saying this is beyond the government's decision. If we vote in a government to take care of the 1.5 degree world that we want to achieve, and they don't do it, we will come to Belém and we will ask that you do it, and we will negotiate that that happens. It's important. All the things we talk about today will not happen with the intense climate effect that we're seeing in many of the events. And one, just if we're doubting it at all, look at Jamaica. And if we doubt it at all, tomorrow there will certainly be another event. And so as we go to COP30, let's make the commitments we need, not just for a good business environment, but for a good environment that allows that business environment to thrive and the rest of us to achieve the many goals, including Copenhagen, that we set out so long ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for a beautiful speech. It's been my honor to be with you today on this private sector forum taking place on the margin of the Second World Summit for Social Development here in Doha. And I hope we don't have to wait 30 years before we have another one. And we really are so happy that we were able to listen to these inspiring speeches today. I invite you to continue networking. There will be a networking reception at the same place where the lunch took place. So please, thank you so much. And thanks for all of you for being here. Thank you.